Imagine yourself showing up to a serious event, the Jewish Leadership Conference, and the first thing you hear isn't a deep on anti-Semitism, but Ben Shapiro going full commentator mode. On stage, he launches into sharp critiques of Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate, delivered at his trademark triple speed. The clip instantly blows up on Twitter, pulling in hundreds of thousands of views. But in the real story isn't the insults, it's how the whole moment feels less like a principled stand and more like a battle for influence inside the conservative world. So in this video, we're breaking down what actually happened. So let's set the scene properly, because context is everything. The Jewish Leadership Conference is supposed to be one of those button-up events where people talk about rising anti-Semitism, long-term strategy, cultural influence, all that serious stuff. It's the kind of place where you expect measured speech, data, and maybe one polite joke to lighten the mood. But instead, the moment Ben Shapiro steps on stage, the whole energy shifts. Suddenly, it feels like we have switched channel from a formal conference to a high-speed commentary show. One where Ben is both the host and the main character. And that's where this thing basically writes itself, because Shapiro didn't simply criticize Nick Fuentes or Andrew Tate. He used the opportunity to turn what should have been a focused conversation into a spotlight moment for himself. Genuine concerns are valid. Fuentes is a documented extremist, Tate is a neck deep in controversies and questionable influence on young men. But Shapiro's delivery turned into a performance art, and you can't help noticing how much he enjoys being the center of that performance. Let's start with the Fuentes part. Shapiro went all in, calling him a harmful influence, a toxic voice, someone leading young men down the wrong ideological path. Fair criticisms, nobody denying that Fuentes has pushed dangerous narratives and built a community around hostility and conspirational thinking. And yes, young men falling into extremist rabbit holes is a real problem worth addressing seriously. Instead of dismantling Fuentes with intellectual arguments, something he usually do based on what his followers say usually, he went for the dramatic monologue route. Rapid-fire insults, moral grandstanding, and highly quotable lines clearly crafted for social media virality. It's the kind of speech that feels less like here's why this ideology is harmful, and more like here's why I'm still the alpha voice of the respectable conservative brand. Please clip this for Twitter. And the irony, while attempting to dismiss Fuentes as irrelevant, he massively increased his relevance by giving him a huge stage in front of national audience. Classic spotlight paradox. It's like saying, nobody should listen to this guy, but anyway, here are 5 full minutes about him at major conference. Then we get to Andrew Tate, and here's where Shapiro almost blends him into the same category as Fuentes, which is its own kind of strange rhetorical shortcut. Andrew Tate is, Andrew Tate. Controversial, influential, polarizing, and let's be honest, deeply problematic in plenty of ways. There are legitimate discussions to be had about his impact on young men, his messaging around masculinity, and his long list of legal and ethical issues. Talking about Tate isn't the problem. But when Shapiro frames Tate and Fuentes as essentially the same internet menace, he oversimplifies the ecosystems he claims to understand. Tate's audience isn't the same as Fuentes. Their ideology aren't interchangeable. Their influence paths are completely different. One thrives on shock masculinity and lifestyle hyperbole, the other rides on political extremism and conspiratorial rhetoric. Shapiro putting them together feels less like nuance and more like convenience. Here are 2 young influencers who treat my ideological territory. Let me bundle them into one talking point. And that's the running theme here, territory. This whole speech isn't just Shapiro calling out bad actors, it's Shapiro declaring ownership. He's not saying that these ideas are harmful, he's saying that these guys are corrupting the youth I should be guiding. It's about hierarchy, obviously. Status, influence, who gets to shape the next generation of conservative thought. Which again will be fine to discuss honestly, but the way he frames it make it less like conversation and more like a turf dispute dressed up as a moral clarity. Let's zoom out even further. Every time Shapiro talks about protecting young people, upholding values, or fighting bad influence, there's an implicit subtext. He positions himself as the safe alternative. It's a branding strategy disguised as cultural critique. Notice how he often pivots into mentioning his own media ecosystems, his educational content, his moral messaging, and his company's family-friendly initiatives. That's not an accident, like it's just part of the package deal. And let's be real, when Shapiro is highly intelligent speaker, I gotta say that he knows exactly how to frame things in a way that include both criticism and self-promotion without making it look like self-promotion. The conference audience probably didn't even register it consciously, but the structure is there. Problem, threat, solution, and solutions happens to be me. Meanwhile, the actual underlying issue is radicalization pathways, vulnerable young men, online echo chambers gets pushed aside in favor of personality drama. It becomes Shapiro versus Fuentes or Shapiro versus Tate instead of here's what genuinely drives young men to these platforms and how we fix it. Even worse, by making his critique sound theatrical, he accidentally reinforced the perception that this all is just a content, a show, a spectacle, one influencer calling out the other influencers, the kind of thing people argue about on Twitter for 3 days and forget by the next week. And yet, both Fuentes and Tate are genuinely harmful influence. That part is true. Tate's messaging around masculinity has inspired millions of young men but also contributed to some truly unhealthy worldviews. Fuentes' ideology is it's dangerous, point blank. Criticizing them is important, but Shapiro turning it into a personalized performance weakens the seriousness of the critique. Instead of an intellectual dismantling, we got a roast battle at a conference podium. Instead of addressing root cause, we got moral superiority and speed talking. So yes, Fuentes is harmful, and yes, Tate is manipulative and influential in all the wrong ways that you can imagine, but Shapiro is framing himself as the heroic alternative. That's where the jokes comes in, because the conservative world isn't having a debate anymore, it's having an identity crisis, and every major figure, Shapiro included, is scrambling not just to educate but to stake their claim in shrinking, increasingly fragmented market to young attention. And maybe that's the real story here, not ideology but influence, not danger but branding, not leadership but competition dressed up as moral clarity. So in the end of the day, this whole movement wasn't just about calling out Fuentes or Tate. It was Ben Shapiro stepping into the spotlight to remind everyone he's still the one responsible voice in a chaotic conservative ecosystem. The irony is, while warning people about toxic influencers, he turned the whole thing into influencer drama. But hey, if this is the future of political discourse, we might be as well analyze it honestly. If you enjoyed the breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think about this whole leadership soap opera. Stay kind, stay curious, and stay critical. See you guys in the next video. Bye bye.